Kukatai is the CEO of Plenty, who also got its start in Wyoming to some degree, and it has sprouted throughout the country as well. And so I'm going to ask you a few questions and turn it over to you, but feel free to expand upon the introduction and tell us a little bit about who you are. Nona, I want to start with you. So tell us a little bit about controlled environment ag and vertical farming, and just kind of give us a little bit of foundation there.
Thanks, Josh. It's a pleasure to be with you here, all of you. Vertical Harvest did get its start here in Wyoming, and thanks to the Wyoming Business Council and its connection opportunities like this that allow innovation like this to thrive. So thank you all for being a part of it, and thank you, John. I think that, for me, I'm an architect by trade, and I've always believed that architecture can be a powerful vehicle for change, right? So what are the systems and the fabric of our community that can address 21st century challenges? And especially, how can we focus on people in the 21st century, and especially those on the margins? So living here for 20 years in Wyoming, we import over 99% of our food. We have a 4-month growing season. We can see winter is here. It's not only coming, it is here. So how do we create sustainable systems, as you were talking about, to support resiliency, right? And community resiliency. And so that's how I came to vertical farming. I saw the farm and worked with an amazing group of people to see the farm as critical civic infrastructure, right? As we're looking at resiliency and what does it mean, it's not only about environmental resiliency, but how could a farm address social justice issues, public health issues, economic resiliency issues? Could it be valued in a community like a community center or a library? These are fundamental anchor institutions. So, CEA fundamentally to us is growing indoors. But if we are able to utilize technology, which we have, to optimize our yields and really support a local food economy, what other problems can we solve? So if we're reconnecting the farm to the urban center, who becomes our new generation of farmers? And we've been deeply rooted in that, really understanding what is the potential of people with historic barriers to entry. We heard in the last panel, how do we solve multiple problems? How do we connect multiple institutions to be able to really create a sustainable community, because we know those are successful communities. So for us at Vertical Harvest, we not only grow food for the local food economy, but we grow futures. In our farm, 80% of people in our town with physical or intellectual disabilities are unemployed. That is a huge problem for the state, right? So how do we create systems that can nurture that? So we have, for the last 7 years in Jackson Hole, created a new generation of farms that are leading the charge in this new technology. And it has been an amazing exploration. So, I think that for me, CEA and for us is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to create systems and look at where are our systems not designed to support communities.
Excellent, thanks, Nona. And Arna, maybe I know that both of your companies, while involved in vertical farming, have a little bit of a different business model or a different approach to this. Can you talk a little bit more about the approach Plenty takes?
Yeah, thanks, Josh. And again, thanks, to both John Tendy and WBC for the invitation and the opportunity to be here today in this magnificent location. I've only generally been here to come skiing, so it's actually great to come actually talk business and technology, science, all the things we're doing here. Firstly, I'm Arna Kukatai, I'm the CEO of Plenty. I'm actually a New Zealander, in case you couldn't tell from my funny accent. Not from here, but I grew up in a multi-generational farming family on the west coast of the North Island. I'm actually a dairy agronomist originally by training, so I have a technical background. But I've spent really the last 15 years actually as a venture investor, investing in food and ag companies, more than 40 of them. So I also, I guess, have some common DNA with a lot of the folks here in the audience around investing in tech. I was actually an early investor in Plenty, along with working alongside Nate Story, the Chief Science Officer and founder, who's a local boy made good, here from Wyoming, based out in Laramie. And indoor ag has fascinated me for a long time, because really, history of human progress has been about our ability to harness the resources to grow our food in a situation where the environment is constantly changing. And so if you think about the agronomist's basic formula for any production crop, genetics, environment management, we've put most of our efforts in technology to controlling G and M because E has never been controllable until now. And so here in Wyoming, we have our primary research centre. So the conversation today around local activity is really centred around the fact that we've built the world's largest controlled environment research centre in Laramie. We have over 40 growing environments. We have just a tick under 100 people based there working in R&D. And specifically in technology development, which is what, if we think of science as the discovery of new knowledge, then technology is the productization of science. And that's essentially what we're doing here in the state of Wyoming. We have the world's largest vertical farm operationally in LA, in the community of Compton. And then we're in construction right now of our first campus just south of Richmond, Virginia, which is in about a one-day driving radius of 100 million consumers, and that's a strawberry farm in partnership with Driscoll's. And then in Laramie, we're building a pipeline of additional crops. That's why the majority of our team there are scientists in plant science. We just actually recruited our new head of plant science, Dr. Sasha Kruse from Bayer, who's moved to Laramie from Dusseldorf. Slight difference. But our objective, not to be too long-winded, but just to maybe bring it back to our conversation, is to create a cluster for building the world's best talent pool in indoor agricultural research. And we're enormously grateful to the state and to Governor Gordon for his vision and leadership and the support earlier this year of what I believe is the state's largest economic development grant, over $20 million to build, which we've just started design work on, our new Centre of Excellence, which will roughly double the size of our R&D platform. Ultimately, we think about vertical farming, it's really a platform for the production of plants and things that can be made from plants. So while leafy greens and strawberries and the crops you'd recognise are front and centre in the way we're rolling products out, really we have a pipeline of crops that include food and non-food uses, including things like biopharmaceutical, material intermediates. Plants are actually the cheapest way to make a lot of these items, but actually having ultra-controlled production allows us to produce things in a way that would not be possible in the field.
Yeah, thank you both for that. And obviously food production has been around for a long, long time, and that is not necessarily a new concept. And even controlled environment agriculture has been around for a long, long time. There are a number of greenhouses, and we've been working to control that as much as we can. But the vertical farming space it's quite new. I think if you take a look at it in the historical context, and when a new industry emerges, the idea of investing in that new industry can be a little bit challenging, can be a little bit scary. I think that's actually a role of a government entity, is to be able to help an industry get through maybe that valley of death, if you will, and really kind of make sure that it survives and thrives. And so can both of you, jump in on this, talk a little bit about the investment landscape as it is today, talk about why it's important to invest in it, and kind of where things are from an investment perspective.
That's a big topic. But maybe just to say, what's been our experience? Well, we've been pretty successful at raising capital. We've raised more capital than anyone else in this sector, close to $1 billion at this point. But the company has really bifurcated its strategy around, one, the technology side of our business, which I was just talking about, which is at the parent company level. And then we have essentially built a business model where we're working towards building financeable farms at the asset level. Earlier this year, we announced a partnership with one of the country's largest REITs, or real estate investment trusts, Realty Income, for a $1 billion construction partnership, essentially at single-digit cost of capital for the land and the physical shell. So we design our buildings to be purpose-built. I'm not a believer in the idea that you can convert warehouses or existing real estate effectively, certainly not for our system. Our system's highly bespoke, and so it works better to actually be able to have a custom-designed building that we can quickly stand up. We started construction on the Richmond facility in May. It's going to be finished by 15th of January. So this is about 110,000 square feet sort of design building, and it's fully funded. The reason it's fully funded is that in our business model, we also pre-sell the output from the farm. So last year we did a $400 million Series E financing. Walmart were one of the largest investors in the round, and they're our largest customer. So we effectively have a multi-year offtake agreement for our production out of those farms. It means we can then use that as a demand signal to finance the facility. And our strategy really is, since we own the intellectual property stack around the entire farm, the farm's the product, we can then go and finance farms at the farm level and continue to raise capital at the technology level. So depending on what your appetite or risk appetite is for returns, you can invest in an operating asset with operating returns, or you can invest in the technology or parent company, which is a tech company. And the reason I know that is that we have double the filed patents of the rest of the industry put together. So there's no way to fake your way into technology and R&D. You have to spend the money over years. And we've invested over the last decade to build our tech stack. So, yeah. But raising money is hard. I know because it's my job.
Yeah.
Well, you've done very well. You know, this industry is challenging. As you said, it's new, but it's necessary, right? This is something that's not going to go away. Food is going to be the defining issue of the 21st century. It already is. And we're not going to replace Big Ag, but can we find tools, innovation, multiple approaches, right, to address it? And for us, it's about local. How can we build a hyper-local farm? And I think that's been, for us, we also invest in project level financing, and we've been super efficient. Because as Phil, you talked about earlier, there are tools, there are mechanisms at the impact level that allow us to really to optimize the capital stack at the project level. These are big buildings, right? They're civic investments. So we have a farm that we're building outside of Portland, Maine right now that's in the heart of the downtown. It's been a public-private partnership. The land has been contributed by the city, right? We've really utilized what are the incentives, what are the city, state, and federal incentives to be able to have this farm thrive. But we need those kind of partnerships to be able to replicate that, because this is about scale, right? We need to create a template that we can scale and expand at a rapid rate. So what we've done in Wyoming is we've created the technology, we've iterated on the technology, right? For the past 7 years, I think we've had 10 generations of lighting. We see ourselves as systems aggregators, integrators, not reinventing the wheel or inventing a new wheel, but saying what wheel has been invented and how do we put it together so that we can really create a farm. For example, in Maine, it contributes over 2 million pounds of produce. For the local food economy, we deliver it within 150 miles of where the produce is grown and really capitalize on the intense need for local. Most communities cannot support local food production year-round, right? But there are hiccups in this industry. It is new, but we are focused on being farmers first, technologists second. The technology supports the optimization of yields so that we also have offtake agreements in everywhere we go, so that we can support the real demand for food. But for us, it's tapping into what do local municipalities and governments need in their strategies. We see it as common. It's food, it's jobs, it's innovation, right? So what does this economy mean, and what does it mean to people? I think in order for the industry to survive, to become a movement, to be something that we can expand the investable universe in, and that's what we really need to do, it needs to mean something to you, your family, your neighborhood, your city. And until we prove that, why this is important to all of us, it's not going to achieve the market share that it needs to survive. But we're very grateful to Plenty and all the money you've raised to help Wyoming and to help the tech in Wyoming, help others as well, create a job force where we can teach each other on how to be excellent operators and to make sure that we attain unit economics, not only the tech, but the unit economics, and prove that, right? So one last point, with this trajectory, we've been able to tap into developers and municipalities across the nation. So our latest announcement is with Bedrock. Bedrock is the development arm of Dan Gilbert, who has invested $4 billion into the city of Detroit to become a city builder of tomorrow. Obviously, Detroit has, it's reinventing itself. So the farm is seen as a critical part of this reinvention. And so that becomes an investable opportunity. So that's how we are aligning with what the impact initiatives of municipalities are, investors are, wealth funds are, to make sure that we have a company that can address these issues that are going to be ahead of us.
Thanks, Nona, and I'm glad you mentioned that idea of the public-private partnerships, and I'm glad you kind of mentioned that it's going to take all of us, really, in concert to make these investments happen. And so, you think about that, and now is, in a lot of ways, now is a really, on one hand, it's a challenging time because of things like interest rates and the availability of some of that capital, but it's also a really good time because there are so many matching opportunities for private funds and governmental funds. And so you think about that, even in Wyoming, as John mentioned, the YVC, that venture fund that we have, where we're working to match those private funds and develop these more funds and bring them in and activate that within the state. But you also think about our energy matching funds, which are matching private funds in energy projects around the state, and infrastructure funds that are matching funds for infrastructure throughout the state. It's actually a really interesting time, and maybe a time that we might not see again for a while, where you're able to kind of leverage your private funds and get them to go further. Talking about funds is it's obviously the piece that is critical to a talk like today. But I want to talk a little bit about this whole idea of ecosystem development and how do we make sure that we're sort of able to scale up, and what are some of the barriers that you're both seeing in that? Obviously investment's one area, but are there other other barriers that you're seeing throughout the industry that might stop that ecosystem development?
No, not really. I think, look, the way we think about it, by the way, congratulate Nona and the team at Vertical Harvest on the great work they're doing. There's going to be a core group of farming operations businesses that are successful in this industry. It won't be one winner takes all, but we also have different approaches to building a competitive advantage in a sustainable business. And the way we've chosen to do this is through advanced technology, and I think there are plenty of industry evidence points around use of techno-economic curves to drive costs down and performance up over time. We sort of joke at Plenty that we're sort of measuring Moore's law of lettuce, and the way we think about driving capex down, driving opex down, driving production up, and technology is a valid lever to do that. We're an integrator too, but in areas where we don't think that we have a competitive advantage. We're not going to reinvent packaging equipment, for example, or chillers, for example. But we are reinventing lights. Independent review on our lighting, we're about 6 times more light output than the next best light in the industry, because actually plants photosynthesize. And so we've done research in plant science that actually shows indoors plants can photosynthesize at much higher saturation points than is possible in the field. So if we think about, well, why does that matter? Well, it's profound to say that now for the first time in agriculture, land is not the gating factor for productivity. One acre of Plenty Farm outputs about 350 acres of irrigated land in like Salinas Valley. So that's about 20x greenhouses. So if greenhouses were the answer, we wouldn't need to do what we're doing. And greenhouses will be part of the answer, but they're still limited by seasonality, by temperature differentials from the outside to the inside. We're not. So when Walmart invested in us, they said, well, the thing we care most about here, or things, two things. One, surety of supply, because otherwise you're betting on where they're getting more predictable. I don't think that's a good bet. And then secondly, assortment. So we're not just growing leafies, we're growing strawberries, we've been breeding our own tomatoes, we have a stone fruit program, we're working on kiwi fruit. I mean, we've got over 50 crops in the pipeline, all of which is being done here in Wyoming, at the Laramie Centre. So again, we've sort of thought about how to break up our different economic activities, and we're engaged in a number of states. I know Governor Gordon gave me a hard time for announcing a vertical farm in Virginia, even though I think you're both Republicans, aren't
He
you?
likes to do that.
Why don't you go over here? And I said, well, look, well, actually our focus here, Governor, is actually on the science end. In Virginia, it's that we're building a campus to build about 6 farms in one location, because our partners, Walmart, Whole Foods, Wegmans, Driscoll's, others, all have massive distribution infrastructure. We have 110 million consumers in a 1-day radius of that campus. That's the reason we're there. You know, so when we think about it, we're going to put other locations here. I fully suspect we'll have a production system in Wyoming at some point, but actually for right now, the focus for us is building on the capabilities we have here. It's great to have other operators here in the state, because we're building a talent force, you know, with a much needed labour force to run and operate farms, but also to do the science. The university, I think, President of the university is here from University of Wyoming. It's been a fantastic resource for us to draw upon in terms of skilled graduates coming out of engineering and agricultural programs. But the next step for us is we think our new Centre of Excellence can also act as a catalyst in the ecosystem for attracting talent in. I know there's a number of new venture funds being set up here. I'd love to chat to a few of them. We have an idea actually of creating an accelerator for indoor ag technology, leveraging our capital asset as a place where new startups can do their own experiments and work in partnership with our team. Sasha, who's our new head of plant science, came from Bayer, before that from Monsanto, so has a lot of experience with external innovation partnerships. And we probably have under-leveraged the relationship with the university, candidly, and this is an opportunity for us to do more. So that was a really long answer.
No, I'm glad you actually talked about all that, because all of the potential of what you described of indoor farming is definitely why, you know, we have an expansion plan at minimum to build 10 farms in the next 5 years. We could do 20, right? But what is, and it's not the regulatory environment that is holding us back. It is indeed investment, and it is, I think, really what you talked about, Arama, excellence, right? How do we create a model that really prioritizes excellence? And so I'm so happy to talk about all that Plenty is doing to invest in the state of Wyoming and to expand crop types and excellence within the industry. Because we all need to be able to be able to benefit from Plenty's success in that way, right? And it is about collaboration. It is about how do we ensure that this industry doesn't get taken down by the skeptics, because we know that vertical farms are the way of the future, right? Being able to be super resource efficient with water, with land, eventually with energy. We know those collaborations are going to enable this, but time is not on our side, right? And we need investors that are going to be patient. And venture hasn't been patient in this category. And we need to find partners who will do that outside of the industry as well as inside the industry.
Yeah, that's a really good segue into this idea that innovation sort of happens at intersections, right? And so I think most folks in the room can remember when pictures were taken on film, and then this crazy thing called a digital camera came out, and I don't know if you all remember the discussion at the time, but it was like digital photography will never, ever take what film has. Never. Digital photography can't do it. And I remember those days, and I remember taking grainy photos of a whiteboard and trying to save that to my computer and all of that fun with that. And it wasn't the same. But if you think about the confluence of technology and the needs of the consumer at the time, and then you look at what happened in just a few short years, and you look at the sideline of a sporting event, or you look at people taking a photo with their phone and putting it up on a billboard, you realize that a lot of intersections were occurring, and there was a lot of innovation happening in those other industries that really benefited digital photography. And so you think about the ability of computers to be able to process images, you think about the chips and the miniaturization of that, and you think of all those things that were happening, not because of digital photography, but because of other investment that was going on and other problems that they were solving. And the fact that digital photography used that, as you mentioned, you know, in some ways you're a technology company, in some ways you're an integrator or an aggregator or a user of those technologies, and you kind of put all of that together, and it's pretty darn exciting, I think. And so the idea that we will never, ever replace what's going on in the field, I'm kind of thinking that maybe at some time we'll say, golly, remember when we used to say that? I mean, what is your take on that?
Look, the farm and food is what connects us all. We have a growing population, right? 9 billion people by 2050. We need all ways of farming. I think outdoor farming will always exist, but can we do it in a more environmentally friendly way? Can we address scale so it's about quality, not only about quantity? And I think that it takes technology, and I mean, technology in open field agriculture is just as exciting as it is in indoor agriculture, right? What we're doing to be able to aggregate different ways of handling drought and pestilence and being more resource efficient and more environmentally friendly. I think it's about technology affording solutions for the future, right? And I think the need for food is only going to grow. So I think that it'll be an exciting future to be a part of. I think that for us, how do you get food to where people are? So our farms deliver food, you know, from farm to fork, ideally within 24 hours. Most of us in this room don't realize that in order to eat a head of lettuce, it has traveled 2,000 miles to get here and is at the base level of its nutrient value and taste value. Why would you spend your money on that? We think we're doing something good for ourselves, and it's not, right? So can we find better ways, more efficient ways of addressing needs where they are? And this is why this idea of hyper-local, starting at the local level, then building up to global, is what's important. But it's going to take all different modalities. So I don't know if we'll ever replace the farm, but we can do it better.
Yeah, I think, you know, technology is the servant, not the master. So effectively we use technology not because we're in love with technology, although quite a few of our scientists actually are, I should just acknowledge that. But what we direct them to do is ultimately in service of producing a better product for the consumer, for all the reasons Nona just touched on eloquently. I think also our customer at Plenty is actually in the first instance the channel partner. So it's Walmart, it's Whole Foods, it's the list of banners I mentioned before, because they're buying our product. In some cases they're buying our farm because we've put our effort into building a technology platform we own, which is very hard, it's very capital intensive. So it's not only capital intensive building farms, which is why you need an appropriate cost of capital process for doing that. But it's expensive developing the disciplines, that intersection of disciplines you mentioned. Interestingly enough, it actually starts with physics. So for the physicists, any physicists in the room, we'll be pleased to know that physics outdoes biology. But from a standpoint of using lighting, so really what we're doing is what's the maximum return we can get from every photon in terms of either biomass or fruit produce, so that essentially light to output or yield ratio is critically important. And it's driven by physics because lights produce heat. And so you have to be able to exit the heat. The more light you put on, the more heat you create. So we don't grow in stacked trays. We designed a system that's vertically oriented, so towers that can be planted on both sides, but where heat can be evacuated. That's why we can use lights that are 6 times the power of any other light in the industry and no one else can, because if they try to use a vertical tower system like ours, it breaches our IP. So we've invested a massive amount of money in intellectual property because that's how we think, we get the greatest return to our use of capital. But also, so we unlock the maximum amount of production. We will see ourselves likely licensing and or selling technology components to other players within the vertical farming industry where our technology can be used and where it's approved. So that takes us to biology, focusing on both crop diversity and also optimization of the production of that biology in an environment where you're paying for the main output that is free in the outdoor world. Hurricanes are free as well. So we end up with advantages in indoor that have really not even been fully explored. I just would stress, that the technology development in this area is very early. But the great thing about that is there are oceans of white space for intellectual property development, which can produce, as we know, and having been a venture investor, I sort of think of this as a standpoint of where can I put my venture dollar where it has the maximum long-term disruption effect. So plant science and biology is, and then the final point I'll just note is AI and data. In our LA farm, we have about 50 million environmental data points a day. So we have extensive camera vision, sensing technology. It's useful because we can see what every plant does. There's about 2 million plants in the farm at any one point in time. We're capturing data points on all of them. So you can imagine as you build more farms, you get essentially logarithmic or an exponential progression of those data sets, which you can then use techniques like AI to drive to specific production outcomes that you couldn't do in the field. I know you haven't been a field agronomist to try and collect that many data points using satellites, drones, imaging equipment on farm equipment, sensors in the ground. It's just massively more difficult to do that when the environment keeps changing every day. When we can have the environment the same every day, every measurement we take is against a baseline that can be benchmarked and improved.
So obviously we're here talking about investment and technology and all that, but I think there's another area, and Nona, you've touched on it a little bit throughout your talk about sort of that intersection of making sure that we're utilizing our workforce in the best way we can and uncovering new workforces, because that is something that everyone would agree is a challenge. So can you talk a little bit about your approach to workforce and sort of the accessibility of the farm to a community?
Yeah, I'd love to. I think if we were just growing food, I would happily be an architect. And it is the social component of what we do is why we grow food and futures and why I'm the CEO of this company. It has been incredibly impactful to see how when you democratize technology, how that can raise kind of all levels of what builds a community. So, our employees before Vertical Harvest were working, entry-level jobs, washing dishes, cleaning hotel rooms. We all have to start somewhere. The difference is now that we've created tools and techniques to be able to focus on ability, right? And we're all neurodiverse, and people with disabilities is the second largest minority in the United States, one that we could all become a part of at any time. So how do we create opportunities to be able to create a new workforce? And how is business responsible for that? And I think that has been something that has clearly amplified Vertical Harvest's voice in the industry and beyond, because people really resonate with our story. Now, people with disabilities are not only contributing the most important thing to any of our communities, healthy, nutritious food, but they're leading the charge in this technology that on Plenty are really leading the charge in, right? So they'll be our teachers of tomorrow in Maine, Detroit, Cleveland, and beyond. And this is a sea change of perception for this population, right? And it is fundamental to why technology is the servant, not the master, right? What can we do with technology? How can it affect people? So we see ourselves as a people-centric business that utilizes technology to create successful communities. And people are at the heart of our communities. So, we love, as with each farm, that we develop better ways to do things. We increase our automation, we increase our cameras, we understand more about the plants. We grow the most pampered plants you'll ever know, right? They are there to just feed you, right, in the best way possible. But how do we nourish the other things that make our community thrive? And the industry thrive. So I think it's been the most exciting part of our work, and I know that it's something that we're going to continue to work on with the Business Council as we continue to look at who gets to be part of the new green economy. We have to, as businesses, take a stand on this, and we have, and it has been truly a remarkable place to be because of it.
Thanks, Nona. And we're going to open it up to questions now, but while we're doing that, I think what's really interesting about this is that when you get a group together and you bring in diverse thought, the best answers come out. And I think it's pretty obvious from this panel that there's diversity of thought that's being applied to this problem, and I think the best answer is going to come out of it. And so I'm really excited about the approaches that you both take, and I think that it's really going to make for a good solution. So thanks for your time today, and I'm excited for the questions from the audience.
So Josh, I'll start us off with a question. So this facility that's being built in Laramie, I mean, this was like a $20 million investment, correct? And it's going to be an amazing facility. So I know that we've got some ag tech founders in the room. Can you give us a sense of when this facility will be completed and how, if someone wants to get involved in this ecosystem, how do they best do it, and when might they be able to engage with an accelerator? Because for me, I think that is an amazing opportunity on the venture side, but it's also a great opportunity for people thinking about starting a company, knowing that they've got all this support there, and there's probably a lot of ideas and opportunities, problems to solve in the value chain. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I think approximately on the design, build, construct schedule with Laramie, with the city, and with WBC, I think we're looking at the beginning of 2025 to have the facility completed. We have a current facility which has over 40 different growing environments in it already, including some that are on technologies that we actually created. So these are like micro-scale pods where you can run A/B experiments, for example, like this cultivar versus that one. But there's also a number of other software tools. So we've built an entire ERP-grade software platform that allows experimental research design. So I've been encouraging our team who sort of like to keep all the toys in the cupboard to themselves to say, let's move more towards an open innovation model where we can encourage others to come and work with us, bring their best ideas, attract their capital, build their own partnerships. And we think that, again, with the university as a core supplier of talent, we can also bring other talent to the table. It's still nascent, so please don't run off and say Plenty's going to launch an accelerator in a press release. Sort of sharing it within this room and sort of somewhat in confidence. But this is the room, one of the reasons I wanted to come to this event was to have a chance to chat with people who might be interested in working towards this type of partnership arrangement. And again, it's another way of us leveraging the public investment by the state, not just to our benefit, but to like the wider development of a cluster, which was part of the agreement we had with Josh and the government.
Yeah, and I think just to sort of follow on, the idea is to develop a cluster there. The idea is to make Wyoming the centerpiece in R&D for vertical farming, and really leverage what we've already started with. We've got a great head start, but really to bring in that industry and create an acceleration ecosystem, because you're right, the ideas for tomorrow haven't even been thought of, and we want to be part of that. And I think that that's part of the state's investment, and the state has other monies to invest there. I think it's important.
And just to add one point to it, the reason we were able to attract a scientist of Sasha's, amazing track record and capability, he's like also one of the world's leading plant science bioinformaticians, so building very large data sets in bioinformatics, is that we showed them what we were going to do with the state's support. We said, you're going to have the chance to have a clean sheet to design this research facility. And of course, what we want to do is use this as the hub of a set of global partnerships. So we're actually talking to one of the largest plant science research centres in my home country, New Zealand. We'd love to talk to our friends from Qatar. We'd love to, frankly, look at the ways in which we can take the core technology around indoor ag, because this is an infrastructure business. We're going to be still talking about indoor ag in 100 years' time. Like, if you think about the total amount of production we're doing today, all of the greenhouses, all of the vertical farms put together in the US, it's 2% of leafy green production. It's nothing. Right, so that's just in the US, by the way, which actually has the highest supply per capita of leafy greens. So the market size of this, I can't even tell you how big the market is. It's just not possible. Like, you spend all year building an econometric model, trying to model it, you can't figure it out. Because the total market itself is going to grow as supply becomes available. This was sort of one of the points Driscoll's made to us, is we can't supply high quality strawberries in the Northeast, they just don't exist, so we sell the ones we have. And if you can figure out a way to produce peak season freshness fruit in the middle of winter, or maybe even here in Grand Teton Village, the market grows. So it's an amazingly exciting industry to be involved in for all the reasons Nona touched on as well too. This is going to be in growth mode for a long time. And final thing I'd say is that the retailers believe it. So put aside the skeptics, again, most of the skeptics reigning shade on the sector don't actually have a single dollar invested in it. So it's okay, you're welcome to your opinion. But I think what we're seeing from the major retailers is they see a gap in supply chain, they're concerned about the future of supply, and they, for all the reasons I touched on too, they love the idea of local food, of hyper-local, hyper-fresh. So there's some strong tailwinds, let alone climate impact. You get asked about lunch using a lot of power we are, but what would you rather try and find? Sustainable sources of weather and water, or fungible, renewable power? I think we know the answer.
Well, and I think to add to that, it's not only retailers, which Plenty has done an amazing job at creating relationships with. For example, in our farm in Maine, it's the hospital system, it's K through 12, it's higher ed, and so we have contracts and we're developing contracts with all of them. And I think that's exactly what you're saying. The time is now for these things to take hold, but it is going to be really exciting with the work the Business Council is doing and the acceleration with companies like Plenty who have done so well in the space from the beginning to really accelerate the technology so that we can, as aggregators, aggregate the technology, right? And be able to use them in the models, because the need, the desire, as you were, that question, what industry can both of us confidently say, there are really not many hurdles to this except for getting where we need to go, right? And so thank you for the support that you're giving this in Wyoming. And as it was said before, this is a small state. We can do so much in this state when we come at it through collaboration, through communication. So I'm excited for what the next few years hold.
Hi, Ted Ladd, professor. Hi, Norm. Hi, Josh. Welcome north. How sensitive is ag tech to energy prices?
Energy is a key ingredient, so as we've been going through doing site selection for future campuses, we're selecting locations that really have probably three critical characteristics. One, very competitive power prices, clearly, and a robust power infrastructure, which candidly is not California. Sorry if there's any Californians here, but we had to start somewhere. We started close to where our technology base is. But Virginia, ticks that box, and there are obviously a number of others that clearly fit that. The second is proximity to all our customers, because our model is to really build at large scale. So Compton, for example, makes about £5 million of production, and that's probably the smallest farm we're ever going to build from a scale standpoint. And then third is like strong business government partnerships. So Wyoming, Virginia, I think the government of North Dakota is here, we should probably talk. But the net is we're looking for partners because capital goes where it's needed, but it stays where it's appreciated.
Ted, I think it's very volatile to energy prices, and that's where our strategies are aligned to where we go, where we expand for all the reasons that were just said. But again, it's where these partnerships lie. We like to say this is one of the reasons we're an urban model. As the grid gets greener, so do we. Half the year here, we're able to support our energy costs through hydro, right? Because that's the way we roll here in Jackson. But also the partnerships. So in Detroit, for example, we've electrified the whole farm, and we're also looking at cogen possibilities. What does a power campus look like? So you need the partnerships that are willing to take the big leaps in saying, how far can we push this with renewables? How far can we push this working as a huge consumer of energy with the Detroit energy companies, right? So it's all about problem solving together, right? And about how do we make this end goal that we all know want to have happen work? And how can we, start to make sure that it works within the pro formas of which we're able to do. When you get farms that are at a certain scale, and we're almost saying 5 million pounds of produce, these farms can be profitable, especially when you start to figure out the OpEx that facilitates that. So what is acceptable within this framework, and how do you work to get to that target? And I think it's a really exciting moment because it is the opportunity for us right now with energy to show that we can work with others who are solving that problem to facilitate our own needs.
Thank you.
Thank you.